Greetings.
Jory,
How's it going?
it's going okay. It's looking like a beautiful day on the East Coast.
It is really nice out today, which is great because I think on like Tuesday it snowed, but now it's gorgeous up here.
It's windows open weather for me, but apparently it's going to be back closed again just in time for the weekend.
I just want it to be summer.
It's getting close. I think Mike gets all the credit for running the KubeCon EU. I jumped on there early in the morning and it was just me and Mike for a little bit. He was looking very sad in a room all by himself, and then eventually a few others showed up.
Ugh, well, I didn't want him to be left alone, sadly.
But
But I do feel like there was like Tiernan pointed out, and he is here, so he can possibly go into depth about his research into our calendars. I only have one public calendar link, and that's this. Did I drop it in chat? I think I did.
I'm using the one that you've been updating.
Okay, so it sounds like there might be other calendars, and that is a problem. Because we don't like to have multiple calendars. There can be only one as far as
I
its calendar Highlander. What did you find, Tianan?
I didn't find multiple calendars. I
Oh, you
think
didn't.
somewhere we've got an ICS file checked into Git that was like manually updated for a little while. Maybe that's been deleted. Hopefully that's been deleted, I should say, because
Oh,
that was silly. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I literally just don't ever remember that we have an OCI calendar, and so I went looking for it and put on my naive user who's curious about the OCI hat and
Yep.
pretended I knew nothing about the OCI. I didn't know where the HackMD was, and I tried to find something, and it's fairly inscrutable. That's not great.
It reminds me of a Mitch Hedberg joke about forgetting everything you know about duvet covers or something. And then they try and sell him a duvet cover, and he's like, "What is a duvet cover?" Anyway, yeah, I think that's the right way to approach it, though, because it should be easily discernible, where things are if you want to get involved. So many of our projects, because I like to do it this way, have hosted their calendar at calendar.projecturl.org. Um, and then that is the link that gets embedded into all the places. Um, it turns out I have to open a ticket with our IT team to generate that. So I preemptively did that, but it's not up yet. And then the question becomes like, where can we go find, or let's go find the places where that calendar is linked and make sure that the link is now to calendar, that to the friendly calendar URL and not the ICS file. So
I'm all for easy links and other whatever we can do to make this stuff easy to find.
mhm.
Is there nothing up on our webpage itself? Got like join links and news and facts. Maybe I should share the thing that I'm browsing because otherwise it just looks boring. Here we are. Mail list, chat, trademark. Yeah, it would probably be good to put it up on the website onto the community page. Got a HackMD and YouTube linked in there. We put the schedule, which is always dangerous, because then if we ever reschedule it, we'll forget to update this for sure.
Who and where might we update this?
I am going to assume that we've got something over here.
Because that's a dangerous question because it implies I want to and I don't. Which
I'm going to guess it's all over here.
that is itself the problem here, right? That nobody actually wants to maintain this website.
I mean, it's not the worst to maintain. It's not great, but it's not the worst.
We're talking. You're talking about the opencontainers.org site.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm not even
sharing it,
sure if
aren't I?
well, I'm seeing GitHub right now, but I don't, can I even log into opencontainers.org? Let me see.
It's Netlify hosted, I'm sure. And so we've got the sources, open containers, GitHub, slash opencontainers.org.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I assumed that.
And so I'm just looking at the community page here.
Okay. Sorry. Apologies.
Yep,
I
no worries.
assumed this was one of our typical WordPress sites. My bad.
Nah, open containers gets to be different. So we've got our source repo up here on GitHub. And so, Tianan, if you know what you want to do. You want to submit a pull request.
Want is a really strong word.
Okay, so this is now relevant to so Vercel is deploying the site?
I'm 90% sure that this is all Netlify over here. Yeah, we got
Netlify.
Netlify Toml.
Okay, great. Okay, great. I'll just open a pull request then to do Gallagher's here because then I just realized that IT is going to be like closed. We don't know anything about this. So
I I volunteered Tianan and Tianan volunteered me. So one of us is going to do it once we figure out who's the happier volunteer for this.
you guys are hilarious.
This is the way things get delegated in OCI. It's
You guys are
fantastic.
like the Spider-Mans pointing
No,
at each other. Yeah.
all right. I think that's enough fun for right now. We should talk about something even more better. We can keep talking about calendar stuff if we still have stuff left on that, but
No, I don't.
I I worry that we're
Most
boring Jeff, and Jeff really wants to chat about this, which is a good thing to chat about. Um,
I actually commented, so I feel like that needs to be acknowledged, and
I
and
I
we should.
was acknowledging it. It was an awesome comment that like the only distribution spec maintainer to do so. So I was like enthusiastically like encouraging more people to follow your lead.
Thank you,
Um,
thank you very much.
so yeah, I'm just about ready to wrap this conformance test stuff up and flip it over for other maintainers to get their LGTMs on this thing so we can get this merged. This and the other half of it, which is over on the OCI conformance repo itself that needs to go together with it. Do I have that linked? I have it linked somewhere. Conformance. Um, oh, it's linked around here somewhere. Maybe under this guy. Anyway, I'm distracting from the thing that I really want to talk about right now, which is that one of my last to do items which I even have a checkbox for it, which was to cache the auth tokens. If anybody has run one of these things, it takes a long time to run if you have authentication turned on compared to if you don't. And it's just because we are either doing the what's the crypt command to hash the passwords and user IDs for every one of these requests, but also you get multiple back and forth requests in the process. And so I think it would be good if we cache the request to be a little bit more like other clients out there. And I'm not sure how we want to do that. So I threw out some different options, figured out, opened up for the community to make suggestions, and then we can go from there. The first option is that we don't do anything. We just make every single request unauthenticated, and it's the way it is right now. It's also the way the current conformance test is. But I think the reason people don't complain about it as much with the current conformance test is we don't run anywhere near as many requests as I'm doing in the new version. We could mimic the way I think the Docker client back in the day would manually generate its own scope for the request. And then if the scope matches, it was able to use the previously cached token. That would be an option. I'm not a fan of that one. Option number two is that we could just probably mirror what the RFCs say, which is that you just reuse the token every single time. There's only one login to the website for most RFC usage. And so they just assume you log in once and use that forever. That would probably cause issues with a lot of registries where they would see us attempt to use an invalid token for the given scope if you switch from doing a GET request to a delete request or from one repository to a different repository. And my fear from that is instead of giving us the 401 with the auth header and say, hey, you gave me one token, but I need you to go get this other token, my fear is we might get a bunch of 403s, which is a straight forbidden, you don't have access to this. And then we don't even have the header and the scope that we need to generate the correct request. So it turns it from one request into 3 requests, and it's a weird workflow. So option number 4 that I think Jeff might have been leaning toward in there, I think it was that, yeah, option 4 is probably the safest, is that we probably mirror what a lot of clients doing right now, which is that they process a request as somewhat of a transaction. And so you bundle together your set of requests for pulling an entire image or pushing an entire image up to the registry. And everything associated with that one transaction is caching the auth header between it. And the last one, which would be kind of a hybrid in between a couple of those, is to say cache the token for a given repository and method together. And so every time I do a delete request to repository number 1, I can reuse that token. But if I then switch to a put request, I'm going to request a different token for that same repository. So that's what we got. And Jeff did the awesome thing. He commented in here and said that he likes option number 5. I like option number 5 too. That was kind of why I was putting it there. Doesn't quite match the upstream RFCs, but I think it's really straightforward to implement. Makes a lot of sense. The challenge with a transaction is I think a lot of people assume that every request in a transaction is the same, but you could easily go from a head request to a put request saying, does this layer exist? And then if it doesn't exist, you then push it. I could work around that easy enough in the conformance test of just saying all these things are puts, all these things are heads. And my transaction is just a little bit more granular. Doing a whole lot of talking and everybody else being super quiet here. This is when after 20 minutes, y'all tell me that my microphone was on mute.
No, your microphone is fine. I just have one question. So, are you worried that the options between like the option 5 is basically first time we authenticate a user and we keep it keep the token cached so that we are not going to the upstream every time, right?
Yes, it's right now the process is number one, which for every single request we make, we first send an unauthenticated request. We get the 401 back in the header. We parse that. We then send the request off to the token server. We get the response. We then send that back up to the thing for every single request. And it doesn't even match what real clients do today.
Hmm. But for the tests that are not like unauthentication tests, for those we can easily cache and reuse, right?
For those that are not authentication.
No, not like unauthentic. So like for like the regular put and all the other tests, right? We can like why caching would be a bad decision here. I'm just trying to argue with
Yeah,
myself.
so the reason to potentially not cache it is I'm worried we're going to run into some registries out there somewhere that if you reuse a token and it wasn't expecting it for some reason, and I can probably come up with some reasons. So some of these things are intentionally me trying to avoid some of those things. Um, but yeah, there are some registries where if you use the wrong token, they'll respond back with a forbidden rather than just a straight unauthenticate and walk you down the path to try to authenticate.
Could it possibly be like an flag? So when we are not intending to test that scenario, people can you toggle it and then not use cached and then spend the time. But for other people who are willing to let go of that scenario, which is I don't think that's very common, but then they can just use the cache and make that test faster, and then focus on the other part of the tests that matters most.
So there was a flag in the as is conformance test to add a scope. And the one thing that's missing is that it was putting in the repository that you would pass, but it didn't put the access you needed within that repository. So it didn't say whether you're requesting put, pull, or delete access in that repository. I could potentially put that back in. The thing is, a lot of this is all dependent on the output of the authentication working group, and so I'm trying not to jump in front of our effort over there. But the problem I'm seeing here is that if we're not mirroring what clients are doing today, whatever we put in here is pretty much going to be how we expect registries to conform with authentication. So putting an optional flag in there almost says, well, all clients must have an optional flag and they must do it some configurable way. And I don't think clients really do that today.
What's it look like to support multiple behaviors in the conformance test? As in, like, if we default to say five, but then kind of have a fallback mode where, yeah, there's no token caching in the conformance test, and we just do one, which is what it is today. Like, is there a relatively easy way to wrap that and kind of default to the most aggressive, fastest mode, but allow a fallback to the most conservative, slowest mode?
I think that could be something we don't even need a flag for. We could just do an automatic fallback. And maybe we throw a report out there, just hey, heads up, we saw some findings with authentication. Maybe you want to join us in the working group. Um, but yeah, that would be very feasible, I think, to just put a fallback. If it's the first request we got back a forbidden, go back through the process of similar to what I described in 3, which was you get the 403, then we send an unauthenticated, then we get the 401, then we send the authenticated. We can put that fallback workflow in there.
I kind of think like being explicit would be better than like fallback, just because like that the expectation, I feel like the expectation needs to be there, like are we or not using the cache?
So I think the question is, do we fail them in the conformance test if they don't pass whatever our authentication workflow is?
I feel like that's like more explicit than to say like this is what expected, right? So if your registry doesn't support reuse of token, then you need to do this change this flag to make sure like that's how you are testing it.
So you don't want to fail them, but you want to make them pass the setting.
Yeah, like do that. Just because that will be explicit, like this is, I mean, everyone knows like what to expect. But yeah.
I think if I do a setting, it's going to be 4 or 5 as one option and 1 as the other option. Like I wouldn't do all 5 options here. I'm going to pick either 4 or 5, and then the fallback is going to be no caching at all. You send every request, and every request gets a new token. Does that sound reasonable, or are you thinking other directions?
I'll let others speak. I just gave my 2 cents there. Yeah.
Sam, I'm not sure how much you've had a chance to think about authentication on the registries on your side. Any concern if I start caching or reusing tokens between requests?
I have not thought about this, and I'm not really directly involved on the registry side.
Okay. All right. Well, unless anybody else has thoughts, it's out there pinging all the distribution spec maintainers, but other people can chime in as well.
Are there
I'll see. Go ahead,
any
Jeff.
are there any
Come on.
clients that don't cache off tokens in some way?
Not that I've come across. Can't say there aren't.
Yeah.
Brian, you have thoughts there?
I was just gonna say that's what I was thinking. Is like as far as I know, everything caches tokens already.
Yeah, my thought is less do they cache, more how do they cache? How granular is their caching?
Yeah. I think
It's always buggy at first, I'll tell you that.
I'm still buggy on mine. I gotta change mine around.
Like I know at least my previous job, we used to cache them. So like in some there were like some scenarios we used to cache tokens.
Yeah, which because every client I've come across does at least some kind of caching of those tokens, I really feel like our conformance test should do that as well. It's just because we don't have a specification saying how much you're supposed to cache and where that threshold is. I think that's where a lot of implementations run into these edge cases. And the whole reason we got a working group to try to sort this out. Alrighty. Think we've beaten this one enough. I've got a rough idea. I'll try to work somewhere between 4 and 5. We'll see if 4 is easy enough to implement or 5, and depending on how that works out, I'll make that a configurable option to fall back to option 1 if users specify they don't want the caching. And then if they don't, I feel like that should be at least some kind of flag in the website that just says, they opted out of token caching. in the final report so that we see that. All right. The only thing I threw on the agenda here was the go mod go sum file, how we're handling that. Did anybody want to chat about token cache before I jump forward? Okay. I wasn't sure if I saw Brian come off mute or if he was just always on off mute. So the go mod go sum, we intentionally have it in the git ignore file, and we only regenerate it for generating a single file in there, which is kind of a really weird thing to do, where we try to have it, then we regenerate it, recreate and all this stuff, generate this one header file for one output, and then make sure it never gets in the repo. I feel like this was all done long before we ever had a go work notation, and I think this is very prime territory to implement the go work inside of the tool and the specs to make those two work together that way. So figured I would double check real quick before I made a PR on this to revamp all this to use go work and to actually have a static go mod and go sum sitting in one of these directories. Anybody offended if I did something like that?
I'll get over it.
Okay. The reason it starts to look kind of funny is that then you get into these child directories where, well, there is a go mod and go sum. It is not in this list, but it should be, because I think this git ignore knocks them out. At least I know when I was doing my PR, I put those back in there saying, okay, unexclude the files in the subdirectory. So we'll go ahead and work that. Yeah, because then you have just a go mod, not a go sum. And I suspect that's probably only in there because someone probably committed it before the git ignore was in there at some point. So there's some strangeness going back and forth between these repos. So I will make that change. See if anybody would like to work with it. Those are the only couple things I had. Anything else folks want to chat about today? It was a light agenda. And Tina, and just because of that, I am going to actually submit that PR. So you're off the hook. All right, quiet crowd today. You didn't miss much on yesterday's meeting. I think we were chatting about, for anybody that showed up early, but they had the KubeCon EU meeting yesterday. And most of it was talking about networking, and they were kind of bouncing around between some of the stuff going on in CNI, NRI, CDI, CRI, all the different three-letter acronyms over there, whether it was in container D or the CNCF tag or Kubernetes, between the different layers, trying to figure out how to sort out networking and if it could be done somewhat more abstractly and consistently at an OCI layer instead of at all these other layers of some of the different projects. And of course, in that discussion, they also kind of hinted yet again of, yeah, we should do a pod spec inside of OCI as well. So folks keep talking about that. I don't think any specific action items for us to discuss came out of there, but if anybody was interested, it is recorded, it is up on YouTube. So feel free to jump in and see what I woke up for at 5 a.m. in the morning. Mostly I just show up to these things and make sure someone Zoom bombs that I can jump in there and knock them off. All right, that's all I got. Last call before we go ahead and wrap this thing up early, get people out of here. Going once, going twice. Sold. Let's call it meeting over. Have a great rest of your week and be back here next week.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Cheers, all.